Good morning, everyone. My name is Anita Friend, and I'm the head of the UK Defence and Security Accelerator. We're an organisation that finds and funds and enables innovation for the benefit of national security, defence, and economic growth. I'm going to be talking to you today about what we as an organisation have done to unleash the potential innovation that exists within the private sector and academia for the benefit of national security and growth, and do that through the case study of our open call. I'm also going to talk through what we've learnt actually from that experience and what practically works in terms of unleashing potential and getting the best from the diverse range of ideas and innovations that exist. But before I do that, I'll start with a quick why, what, and how in terms of what DASA does, and then I'll move on to the case study. So in terms of why we need to innovate, from a national security perspective, science and technology, as I'm sure you're all very aware, creates a whole range of potential. And in the main, that's a really great thing. So that potential is used to make society better and to create brilliant solutions that make our lives easier. But unfortunately, science and technology opportunities are also opportunities that our adversaries, those that seek to cause us harm, be they states, be they terrorists, be they criminals, seek to use to their advantage to cause us harm. And so ultimately in national security, the importance of innovation is ultimately about trying to convert the potential from science and technology quicker and better and smarter than our adversaries do. And to do that on a sustained, enduring basis, so to continue to innovate on an ongoing basis and doing that quicker, smarter and better than our adversaries. And for national security, we've realized that in order to do that, we really need to work in close partnership with industry and academia, because actually they are the experts at actually helping us come up with the very best ideas. But the problem that we have within national security is that historically, for many good reasons, we've only engaged quite narrowly. So we've engaged with a fairly narrow range of suppliers. For security concerns, ultimately there is information where we're trying to protect individuals and ensure that their safety is not compromised. And that narrow engagement means that inadvertently we've stifled innovation within national security. So that kind of race that we were talking about in terms of getting ahead of our adversaries is something that we've already kind of created on an equal balance against our adversaries. We're effectively racing in an uneven race against our adversaries. And so the realization that we've come across in national security is that we really need to engage more broadly. We need to be able to unlock that potential that exists within the wider industrial and academic base that we haven't tried to tap into before, if we are to keep ahead of our adversaries. And if we are to do that, we need to recognize that because we haven't historically engaged, actually most of the those that can help us will invariably have a patchy or limited understanding about what we actually need and want within the national security world, simply because we haven't engaged. We haven't had those conversations. So part of this leveling the playing field and sort of balancing this kind of race is actually about helping to build understanding, knowledge, connections that actually allow those that are in the industrial and academic base to have the information that they need to be able to help us. And that really is why DASA exists. So DASA exists to be able to proactively engage with those that we haven't engaged with before in industry and academia, and to help them make the connections, build the understanding, and build the knowledge that they need in order to help us, and to build partnerships within government to actually make that work. And the final thing in terms of the why that we exist is a recognition that innovation fundamentally depends on partnership. So you will have technical experts that will have brilliant ideas, you will have industrial suppliers that will have brilliant product ideas, and you will have academics that have the same in terms of ideas, knowledge and understanding. But ultimately, from a national security perspective, that is only valuable if we've worked out how to adopt it and how to implement it and how to use it in a way that gives us advantage over our adversaries. And that requires knowledge, expertise and understanding from those that work across the national security community, who actually understand the operational realities, the strategic realities of how we are operating against our adversaries. And so fundamentally, if we are to unleash the potential of innovation, we have to be able to support partnerships. And so that is the other centre of the why for DASA. So it's proactively reach out to those that haven't engaged with us before, help connect them and help them to understand our world so that they can help us, and help build and create partnerships that will actually lead to success for national security and wider growth. So in terms of what is DASA, as I've sort of noted, DASA is a customer-focused organisation, and by that we mean we are focused on the needs of the national security and defence community. So how can innovation in the wider world, so in the industrial base and the academic base, how can that help them? And so ultimately what we're doing is matching great ideas that are out there in the industrial base and the academic sector with problems and resource and funding in the national security community to actually bring those things together to be able to collaborate and achieve success for national security. In doing that, we have to be a source of knowledge and expertise. So we have to be able to help our innovators that come from private sector and academia. We have to be able to help them understand who is it that they will help within the national security community. What do their problems look like? What will the market look like? What will the route to market look like? What might be involved on the journey along the way? What hurdles are they going to have to overcome? And all this knowledge and expertise and ability to connect is really about helping those innovators actually preempt and plan, make the right connections, build the right knowledge and understanding, and develop something that we actually need and want. Because ultimately, if we need and want it, we're much more likely to actually adopt it and to use it. The second thing is that we have to support and enable collaboration. So in providing those connections, we have to help the different parties to those collaborations to actually understand each other, to understand their perspectives, to understand their concerns, to understand their worries, and to understand what will be potential blockers to this innovation. Because ultimately, innovation is about providing reassurance and showing that we can work around those. So actually building that understanding through bringing together the right parties is really critical to making innovation work within the defence and security sector. And finally, within DASA, we need to be innovative. So there isn't one way of doing things that will always work forever. There are different solutions for different types of innovation. We are continuously learning from our innovators about what barriers they come across and what barriers we need to help them overcome. And we're continually learning from our national security and defence customers about what help they need, what problems they need fixing the most, what are their worries, what are their concerns, what are the points of resistance, and therefore what do we need to help, again, customers and innovators overcome. So being continuously flexible and agile is very central to how DASA operates. In terms of the how, we are very much, as I said, about overcoming the barriers that exist to innovation for all parties. The very first barrier that we try to overcome are the engagement barriers. So going back to my point earlier of historically, defence and security hasn't historically engaged widely with a wide range of innovators. So our very first hurdle that we have to help innovators overcome is that they don't yet know that they can help us. So many of the suppliers that we talk to have not yet made the connection between the idea and the thing that they are working on and a problem set that we care about and worry about. So that's the first part of our job, actually help them to understand their relevance to our world and how they can help us. The second part is once we get over that hurdle, they then very often don't actually want to work with us because actually they've seen innovation within defence and security. It's really hard. There's not that many success stories and there's not that many suppliers that actually make it through to contracts within the defence and security world. Certainly not those that are not already our traditional suppliers. So the next hurdle that we need to overcome is to help build confidence in the market, to build credibility. So by having a transparent assessment process that is pulled from multidisciplinary experts across government that can credibly show that the things that we are supporting are things that the UK national security community needs and wants. There is a customer, there is a market, this is something that you actually can have confidence on. The second thing is actually helping to connect organisations across the system to build a pathway. So actually, when we start working with you, this is what your experience will look like. We'll start here. We'll then to do various collaborations, and this is the journey that we are expecting that you will go on to the point of success. And by building those pathways, we're building confidence, actually, that this is a sector that you can succeed in and that you want to be part on. And then obviously then promoting that so that people understand that actually you can succeed within the sector. So that has a sort of a reinforcing circle in terms of bringing people in. The second is then to actually do that kind of hand-holding and support for innovators around what practical support do they need in order to overcome the hurdles. So we start, once we've actually selected innovation, we do an assessment around what specifically they need, and then we provide tailored support, some of which we provide ourselves, some of which we signpost to other organisations in the wider government innovation community. But ultimately what we are trying to do is to help them overcome the barriers that they are going to experience. And that will be around helping them to understand the market within the national security landscape, helping them to make the connections, helping them to understand the problem set that they are actually going to be trying to solve, helping them to understand the worries and the concerns, and helping to actually link them up to other support providers that can provide the support that they need. So supporting their commercialisation. And then finally, helping to level the playing field by helping them to open doors that they might not otherwise be able to open. So to make introductions, to make connections that they would otherwise struggle to make, because actually the defence and security landscape is quite complicated and quite confusing. So just to dive a little bit more, I've talked a little bit about levelling the playing field, but to dive a little bit more into why this is so important to unleashing the potential of innovation. Ultimately, what we're aiming to achieve is an inclusive innovation ecosystem, one which is absolutely supported by collaboration and partnerships between all the different organisations that exist within the national security and wider government innovation landscape. And we're seeking to be that super connector, that organisation that can help suppliers navigate the really complicated system and can help them make the connections and partnerships that they actually need. And then helping them to think about practically what will scaling look like within the market that they are operating in. Will that be a defence only or a national security only scaling? Will they operate within just our market? Do they have cross-sector implications? Will they be working across a number of different sectors? Will they need to partner with other organisations? If so, what other organisations might they want to partner with? Will they need to secure external investment? If so, how do we build confidence that they have a credible business model that actually makes them a lower risk investment, that actually capitalises inward investment into their company so that they can grow and scale in the way that we need them to? And how do we connect them to the ultimate end user so that they can understand the solution and make sure that they have a user-centric solution that will actually work and that we will ultimately want to buy? And our open call plays a really key role in all of that. So the open call for us is a really critical part of our sort of inclusive open gateway to actually helping innovators. To give you a little bit of detail about what it is kind of what it says on the tin. It is a continuously open call that is open to any idea or any solution that innovators in the private sector and academia believe will have benefit for national security or defence. And we give them a little bit of a guidance as to what that might look like. We deliberately make the process as easy as possible from an innovator perspective to actually apply. So our application process is short. It is relatively burden, but doesn't place a large amount of burden on the innovator. And importantly, it allows the innovator to keep their IP and to have the commercial freedoms to be a successful company. It is open all year, and we trawl the open call at several points during the year for the best ideas. And we have an assessment process that assesses which ideas we should support. Once we've actually selected our ideas, they will get an R&D contract, which is intended to nudge their technology in the right direction, so in a direction that is going to be useful for defence and security. And we link them up in the way that I've just described to the right parts of the system to actually then have a pathway, the pathway of least resistance to success within their chosen area and where they're going to be impacted. Typically, our funding is between 100 and 350K per project, so we're making relatively modest and small investments. But the idea is that investment, and with all that linking and leveling support that I've just described, actually allows the supplier to access much more than just the funding and just the technical support. It allows them to access all of the follow-on support from other organisations that we connect them to, and it allows them to leverage external funding in from other organisations. And our average leverage ratio is that for every pound we've spent, our suppliers get £4 on average back from elsewhere. In terms of the process, just to unpack that just a little bit more, as I mentioned, we have a transparent assessment process. This is really important for us. This is actually about building that credibility that the idea that they have submitted is actually something that we want and need. So our assessment process draws on a multidisciplinary assessor network that is drawn from across the national security community, so the experts that actually know what is needed and wanted, and they will assess the ideas for technical viability, for feasibility, so for value for money and the degree to which it can be delivered, and importantly, desirability. So is there actually a problem out there that we can match their idea to? And we do that by having networks within government, as well as having the networks that we have with suppliers out in the market. And then once we have the projects, as I said, they will then get the follow-on support. And the end, we hope that they are then at a point where they are exploitable and can have impact for defence and security. Just to talk you through statistics in brief. So of that open call, our overall success rate for DASA is at 40% of our suppliers. So 40% of our suppliers are non-traditional suppliers, so suppliers that have not worked with defence and security before. And around 70% are SMEs and micros. So of that 70%, 37% of those are actually micros and startups, so very new suppliers that are just beginning business. So that's how we are supporting the kind of the growth agenda. From a supplier perspective, it's an attractive call. So the success ratio for suppliers is 1 in 5. So 1 in 5 that apply will actually end up getting support. The reason that we are able to do this is that we have an innovation network, an outreach network across industry and academia, which actually provides the first point of contact for our innovators. And what they do is to have an initial conversation with those innovators and help them to understand our world and how they can help us. So at the point that they actually apply into our open call, they've already built a considerable amount of understanding and knowledge and are able to pitch their ideas in a way that makes sense and will be useful to us. And we've also, for those that have no obvious benefit for national security and defence, we will have gently turned those ideas off. So, which is basically around ensuring that we're not wasting suppliers' time as much as we're not wasting our own time. So we have a success rate of 1 in 5. In terms of the actual impact from those that we fund, we know that overall, around about 25% of the ideas that we fund end up having real-world impact for national security and defence. And we get that off the back of surveys with both our suppliers and with our customers, who verify what has happened to those innovations after we've supported them. And we know that of those success stories, over half of those, so 52% of those, actually come from our open call. So importantly, 52% of the ideas that end up in success for national security and defence that come through the Defence and Security Accelerator were not ideas that we were proactively looking for in the start. So this really underlines the importance of having an open call and making sure that we've got a mechanism that allows us to ensure that our blind spot, because we've all got a blind spot, we're not experts on everything, actually isn't stifling and limiting the potential of innovations that can help us. So this open call is bringing through ideas that we didn't, within the national security community, think were possible and weren't proactively looking for. And they have been, as I said, they've been having impact in a real world way. So just to give you an idea of some of those, and as I said, we've got lots of these examples, but I thought I'd talk you through 2 of them, just to give you a little bit of a flavour of what we're talking about. So the first example is a company that's called Goldilocks. They came through our open call, and what they do is they provide the ability to effectively pull the plug on IT systems remotely. So it's a bit like actually physically pulling the plug, but rather than actually having to do it, you can do it remotely through an SMS message. Now, what this does is provide the potential to provide really great cybersecurity protection from a number of different scenarios. And through the funding support that DASA has provided them, we've helped them to firstly pivot from something that wasn't a defence solution, so they were operating in data centres and they weren't focused on the national security use case needs. We've helped them to pivot their solution in a way that is actually useful for cyber protection and security, and to think about the specific needs by linking them up with the relevant communities. We've also helped to increase their exposure. So we've helped to raise recognition of what they are doing in those communities that have interest in what they are producing. And that has led on to follow-on support through the likes of NATO Diana, but also through international suppliers. And we know that we've had interest for their innovation through both MOD, but also through the US Department of Innovation, and it is actually being used within the Ukraine by their cyber force. So it is actually in use, having impact real time. And I think really what this case study illustrates is the things that I've been talking through, which is really that actually this was a supplier that hadn't thought about working within defence and security, yet are now actually operating on the front line effectively, or their innovation is operating on the front line of the security effort with regards to security, cyber security. And the feedback from that supplier and the work that we've done from them is actually what really helped, were the connections and the knowledge and that understanding and the linking them up with the relevant partners to allow them to work in collaboration, to allow them to succeed. And that is something that is absolutely critical to unleashing the potential of innovation. The second case study is quite similar in many ways. Again, this came through our open call, and it's by a company called Trilateral. They are a small London-based SME, and they provide ethical AI. And essentially what they do is allow us to combine insights around atypical behaviours and case work data to actually make an assessment of risk and to make informed judgments. Now, they started off thinking that their product would have impact for defence and would help within the defence space. But what we were able to do was to direct them actually into the security and policing environment, and actually what they have done is developed a product which is very much interlinked with the end users, working in close partnership with the end users, and which allows risk-based judgments to be made in regards to safeguarding. And they deployed that in a trial through Lincolnshire Police, and what that was able to show was that it actually significantly increased the timeframes at which interventions could be made in safeguarding cases, which actually has the potential to save lives, because actually time makes a huge difference in these cases. And they have gone on to be used by the Greater Manchester Authority and are actually in deployment there. Again, this was a case study where their impact was rapid, so they were able to do it in a number of years. They've not been working with us for very long, so it proves that you can actually do this at pace as well as actually get it through to success. And once again, it's been that continuous sort of support and connections which is what's really helped make the difference in terms of unlocking the potential. Before I conclude and open up for an opportunity for questions, just really to kind of recap on the key things that have made a difference for us in terms of unleashing the potential of innovation. I think the first thing that we've learned is that we absolutely have to proactively engage. There is not a group of suppliers that are proactively trying to find us, predominantly because historically we haven't engaged widely. So we have to overcome that engagement barrier. We have to make it easy to get in contact with us. Secondly, we have to make a really confusing landscape, and defence and security is a really confusing landscape. We need to make that landscape as simple and easy to navigate as possible. So we need to use our networks, our connections, our knowledge, our expertise, and our partnerships with other organisations to connect our innovators to the right people that can help them, as well as connecting them to their potential customers so that they actually have an understanding of what their customers will actually want and need. And then the final thing is that in addition to making those connections easier, is that ultimately we can't, my organisation can't, do this on our own. There is a whole innovation community, and many of them are here today. There is a whole innovation community, each of which have different skills and different support and different knowledge and different expertise that actually supports innovators actually get their idea to actually be able to have impact for society in some way. And it is my hope that actually, if anything, that we should learn from all of our experience today is that by working in closer collaboration between our organisations and making that pathway as seamless and as straightforward as possible for innovators to succeed and for partnerships to happen, we can maximise the impact together between us. And so events like this are hugely important to DASA because actually we're really up for and really keen to forge more and deeper partnerships with other innovation organisations, because we absolutely can't do it without those collaborations. And that is where success for UK innovation is going to come from, because ultimately we've got to make it easier for innovators to succeed within the UK. We've got huge potential out there in the industrial base and the academic base. We need to be able to unleash that. We need to be able to work together to actually get that through to the point of impact. And ultimately that will have impact for growth, because that will mean that startups and SMEs can go on to succeed and to build sustainable business models within the UK that work not just to help the UK sort of societal problems, but also help to grow the economy. So to that end, I will conclude, but very happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Yes, we have a question here.
Hi, I'm Boriana Stambolova and I work at Innovate UK. I want, it's a good question. I wanted to ask how you engage with the investment community, because at some point those amounts are too small and investors would need a lot more. And then the second thing I wanted to check was a defense and security slant. Would it not prevent the innovator from capturing a much bigger market which might be out there for dual use technologies? Thank you.
Yeah. So two great questions. So on the first question, one of the things that we are doing is helping our innovators to be able to attract external investment from not just VCs, but also the whole range of different types of investors. And as I touched on, for every pound that DASA spends, our innovators on average are getting £4 back, and that is from those external investors. How we are doing that is really helping those suppliers that we work with build a clear and detailed understanding about what their market looks like within the defence and security world, and also what it looks like more broadly, because actually for many of the things that we work with, there is a dual use, and they do need to operate in other sectors. But by having that clear understanding, as well as assurance really that there are customers within the national security community that are actually interested in the thing that we are supporting, we are effectively de-risking those opportunities for investors. And then by funding the technology to develop in a way that we know is of interest to us, we're further de-risking again. And when we work with our investors, that's one of the things that they really like by the DASA-supported innovations, is that they know that there has been quite a significant amount of work done to ensure that there actually is a market for this within our sector, and that our supplier actually understands the needs that they are seeking to address, and that there is a real business need, and therefore there is a sustainable business model. And just to your second question, which is linked around dual use, absolutely. For many of the innovations that we find, actually there are dual use across a number of different sectors. One of the conversations that we have quite early on with our suppliers is around what's going to work for them, because different things will work for different types of solutions and different types of suppliers. But is it going to be a defence-only solution or a national security-only solution? Is it going to be one that serves multiple sectors? At what point is the right time for them to diversify? They may already have started in another sector and be pivoting into the defence and security sector, or they may just be starting up. And at what point is the right time for them to diversify across different sectors? So it is very much different solutions for different suppliers. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. But that's one of the conversations that our teams have with our suppliers around what is likely to make most sense, and linking them up with other organisations like Innovate UK that can really help in that regards. And NSIF is the other organisation that we direct our suppliers to when they're at that point needing support for investment.
Hello, my name is Ellie Havens, and I'm here with NATO, the Maritime Command in Northwood. Very familiar with Diana, as you mentioned. And I was just noticing, though, when you were showing the funding and where it went, it mostly was in the UK. There was a very little bit outside. And I was just wondering if that was really on purpose, and are you looking more internationally? Obviously, with NATO, that's easier for us to do. So just wondering if you could comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. As you picked up, most of the funding for our innovators is UK funding. So when we are matching our ideas to customers with funding, they are typically UK government customers and therefore UK funding. But we do have a international dimension to what we do. So there are a number of aspects to that. So first, when I talked about our network, that is outreach network, which is linking to suppliers, we have an international connection there, so that you're actually looking for international suppliers and attracting them in where they can help the UK. The second is that we have done a number of innovation calls where it is a collaboration between UK government and an ally or NATO. And so that is a possible route. So there could be dual funding coming in from a number of different sources. And then finally, we also talk to our suppliers about exports quite early on, because that will be part of their commercialization plan and their commercialization strategy. We have a formal link to NATO Diana, so we are one of the delivery partners that co-deliver the UK accelerator bit of NATO Diana in conjunction with the Janus Consortium, which is a private sector consortium that were brought in to bring even greater expertise in terms of that kind of commercial acceleration of businesses that kind of complements what DASA does really nicely. But that link means that we have connections and links into NATO Diana, which really amplifies what we do within the UK and allows us to focus in on those things where actually allied collaboration will make an even better solution. So that is absolutely part of our sort of overall landscape, if you like. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. My name is Osato. I'm an applicant to the DASA Open Call. One question I do have is you shared stats that 1 in 5 applicants are successful through to funding. With the increased focus on defense spending and helping solutions come through to support the defense sector, do you see an increase in that metric from 1 in 5 to maybe potentially 3 in 5 getting successfully funded through DASA?
So I think it's probably too early to say exactly how the current announcements and funding sort of uplift will affect the precise funding arrangements for the open call, but we are certainly committed to ensuring that we have a favourable success rate for suppliers, because we're really conscious that actually in encouraging suppliers to bid into competitions, it actually takes a large amount of effort, even though we've made it a streamlined process. And actually we want to ensure that we're not wasting time on a really onerous process which has a really unlikely chance of success. So part of what we try to do is make sure that we've got the right levels of funding and that we commit our resources in the right way to kind of keep that success rate at a sort of a favourable level. But it's too early to say exactly how that will change with current funding arrangements. Apologies.
Hello, thank you. Really interesting. My name is Tatiana, I work for VOA. I have a question about if you did any research to understand what makes people or innovators to answer your open call. Is it money, investment, or is it genuine, probably believe that they can help the country? Because understanding the reasons why people answer the call or apply will help you to probably boost the application numbers.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the first thing to say is our application numbers are pretty high at the moment, but you're absolutely right. That feedback on what drives suppliers to want to apply is really important. We do that in a couple of ways. So one, I mentioned the outreach network that are having continuous day-to-day conversations with suppliers in industry and academia, and they're constantly capturing feedback about what motivates suppliers, and actually equally what puts them off. So what puts them off from wanting to work with defence and security, and therefore what barriers should we be seeking to overcome? And that continues to inform our strategy. The second is that we do an annual survey with all the suppliers that have had any interaction with us in any way, where we capture feedback, and again that feeds back into our design model to make sure that we're focusing on trying to overcome the barriers that are the key frustrations for suppliers, so that we can get the very best from what the potential that's within the academic and the industrial base for defence and security and economic growth.
Hi there. Paul from the Environment Agency here. I'm just thinking about public sector, other organizations, and how do we benefit from the ideas coming through that may not be pertinent for the defense and security sector, but might be beneficial to other public sector organizations.
Yeah, no, great question. So we have as well as our outreach network, we have an in-reach network which is designed to sort of speak to those that might benefit from innovation and to help understand what it is that you need and want from innovation, so that when things come through our open call, we know the sorts of things that may be of interest, and if there is an interest there, direct you to those so you can verify which ones are actually of interest and which ones are not. The other thing that we can do is, that we have done in the past, is we have done webinars on behalf of customers to help get a sort of a greater understanding out there to potential applicants for our open call, to understand the sorts of things that you worry and care about, and that can help stimulate ideas in a particular area if that is of interest. We can do, in addition to our open call, we run themed calls, which are for a particular government customer. So a customer can come to us with a particular problem in mind and say, we really want to find innovation to address this particular challenge. And then we can design a competition around that using your funding and your resource, but then helping to find the relevant innovators and support them in a way to help you. So there are a number of ways in which we can do it. If you are interested, use the contact details that are on the screen, and we can drop you a line and explore what in particular is of interest and how we can support.
Katie from MOD. How do you protect the organisation in case it is a threat? Do you do background checks on the people who have gone on the forum?
We do, as you would hope we do. So in all of this, we're making effectively a risk judgment. So we've made a judgment that actually by being more open, we can get the very best solutions through to defence and security, but we're doing that in a managed way. So our assessment process, when we look at desirability, one of the things that we do look at is the degree to which there might be a risk. And that may be a reason. It wouldn't be explicitly communicated as that, but that would be a potential reason why a supplier might not get through if there were particular concerns. We also make sure that the information that we have, although we operate at official level, so we don't do anything at any of our calls at classified levels, we obviously ensure that all the information that is out there is information that the customer is comfortable being in that open environment. So we work very closely with the customer about what can be shared, how we might share it, so there may be ways to share the requirement in a way that protects particular information that is of particular sensitivity, and we will work with that customer to work out what can be in the open domain and what can't, so that we can make sure that we protect that in an appropriate way. But it's a really important aspect to all of this, is making sure that we're not inadvertently introducing risk by trying to overcome risk.
Hi, I'm Sam from the Home Office. Hi, I'm Sam from the Home Office. I've just got it's a question about, you have obviously got a lot of different products, different partners involved. That must be really hard to maintain a good architecture, like overall architecture. How are you doing it? Because we have a lot of trouble with that in my department. This must be just squared for how complicated that is.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Making sure that we have the networks in place to enable those connections that I talked to, and being able to protect the information as we just discussed is really important. So we've spent a lot of time building our outreach network and building our in-reach network. We do that through a network of networks. So it isn't, as I mentioned, it isn't my organisation operating on its own in some sort of glorious isolation. It is my organisation linking into other organisations. So we work with the likes of Innovate, we work with business networks, we work with regional networks, we work with academic networks, and effectively what we're doing is plugging into other people's networks so that we have a network of networks. And the same thing exists on the government side, so trying to plug into gatekeepers who are able to access or enable us access to a wider network of people, so that we're not having to do a sort of a one-to-one interaction, because that would be absolutely huge and beyond the resources of our organisation. And spending a lot of time thinking about getting people with the right skills into my organisation. So we've deliberately, diversely recruited, so to make sure that we have people that have experience of working within industry and academia and understand it, of what it actually feels like. And they're in our outreach networks. Having people that understand and have worked with investors and have previously worked within that sector, and they manage our investment networks and our who actually really understand that community. And then similarly, those that have got operational experience both within defence and national security, and bringing them in to actually provide those connections and links, so that we are trying to build that trust and credibility and kind of build into those wider networks. But ultimately it's done through collaboration, and making sure that we continue to really deliver against what we know is important for each of those gatekeepers. So making sure that when we've said that we will protect information, we actually do protect information, and that they don't have a worry that the information that they are passing to us will be misused or mishandled in some way. So making sure that we have those procedures in place is another kind of important aspect to what we do. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Liam. You give a couple of examples of the sort of things that you fund. Do you have it publicly accessible to get other examples that you funded?
So when we work with our suppliers, and as part of the application, they obviously submit information about their idea, and ultimately we have a duty to those suppliers in terms of protecting their IP and sort of information. We maintain a list of the ideas that have been assessed to be fundable, and we share that with potential government customers, with the permission of those innovators, in a sort of a careful, controlled way. So yes, we do share, but we don't put it out on the public website, because actually we make promises to our innovators that we will protect and look after their IP, but we make sure that we get that information to the people who are interested. So if you are a potential customer of innovation and have an interest of what we might have in our books, drop us a line. We can certainly look to connect you to the right innovators. And if you are an innovator wondering whether there are other innovators that you might partner with, we have a ideas marketplace, which essentially is a online digital platform that allows suppliers obviously to share what they are comfortable with about the innovations that they have worked on and that we are interested in, and essentially to advertise opportunities that people might be interested in having collaborations with those organisations. So it helps to make connections. So that's another way in which we can connect you to others with ideas that might be of interest, and customers can go on that as well to look at whether there are innovators that are operating in a particular space that you might be interested in working with. But obviously, going back to the kind of security questions earlier, we're very careful to make sure that we do that in a way that actually our innovators and our customers would be comfortable with. Excellent. I think we are out of time, but thank you very much for listening and for your brilliant questions. Thank you.